The devil is playing to try to destroy our soul. That's his one game. His one aim is to try to destroy our hope. And if you lose hope, then you get discouraged, and you're in bad shape. I want to tell you something tonight. If there was ever a time to be encouraged, it's now. Now, me and Sister Jerry last night watched, and I want to tell Merv, forgot to tell him, watched Jonathan Cain. I want to tell you something. It showed him where he got to go in to the representatives, governors, and all of them. And brother, I want to tell you something. God used that man. If he didn't turn that place upside down, they can't stand and say we was never told. God will look at them and say, I told you, I sent my prophet, and he told you exactly if you didn't straighten up what's going to happen. I mean, he laid it on the line. He didn't beat around the bush about it, and he was as bold as an ox. And then tonight, we figured he'd come on back tonight because it was on 10 o'clock last night. Lo and behold, Randy was on. And got to see Randy. And I tell you what, that Texas tornado ain't slowed down a bit. But what I want to tell you something. Do not let your guard down. Because the Bible tells me that in St. John 10:10, there was a feller called the thief. And he come not but to kill, steal, and destroy. That's what he come for. If he could destroy your influence, if he could destroy your zeal for God, if he could get you sidetracked, and you know how that he'll do that? He will make it so busy for you that you won't have time to do what you need to do in church. Listen, being busy is not always good. Sometimes you got to watch and say, is this busy of God or is this busy of Satan? Has he fixed this for me so that I would get caught in his snares? Because I'm going to tell you something. We're living in one of the most critical times that there is of the journey of the church of the living God. We're living in a time that men are being deceived, and people don't realize and know. And we've got false prophets arising on every hand. And be sure, God's not changed his plan. He tells us that he set in the church prophets and apostles, pastors and evangelists for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body until we come in unity of the faith, and we're not tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine. He does not want you being tossed this way, that way, and that way, and that way. And you cannot eat from this table this morning and eat from that table tonight. I don't care who it is, it'll mess you up. Now, I've been there. I've been down that road long enough to know that we have got to watch what we're doing, because the devil will use some of the finest looking things that ever was. People looks at stuff, and that looks green over there. Yes, sir. Over top of a lot of yards over there, if you dig underneath, there's a septic tank, and that's what's feeding that. And that's what it is. If the devil shows you something real nice and green, you better watch and you better check and make sure it ain't being fed from Satan. Because he'll make things look good. He'll make things look real good. He'll tell you things that's not a bit more truth in the world. He'll tell you, they just don't like you. You notice they never shook your hand. And hey, a little something like that should never bother a full-grown Christian. Because I want to tell you something. We got brothers and sisters that they're fastening in their church and burning them down. And they're beheading them. And they ain't giving up for Jesus. They're hanging in there. Because you know why? They know that if they let down the guard, they lose, they're going to hell. We've got to stay in and endure unto the end, and the same shall be saved. Now, there's no getting in and getting out. I've seen people run and until trouble hit their home, and they'll come, oh, pray for me. I'll tell you, you don't know what I'm going through with the devil. Well, who got you in the shape? You know what the book says? It says, if there's any sick among you, let them call for the elders of the church, and let them anoint them with oil, and pray the prayer of faith, and the faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise them up. But if there's any afflicted, let them pray for themselves. There's a man come to the other church over there, the Mama Church. And he told me, he said, the reason why I've come over here, he said, I come to get saved. He said, I saw your daddy right back from his house. He had a little barn up there. He was cleaning up, and he had brush raked up and straw and stuff, and he had a fire. And that fire got out of control, and he said, I seen him hit his knees and start praying, God, I'm going to lose my barn, everything I've got. He said, I saw a cloud come over top of that fire and put it out. He said, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. Dad never did tell that, because you know why? He thought that maybe you would think he was bragging. And he never told a lot of things that I knew that happened. They had prayer meetings, and when they had prayer meetings, something happened. I'm going to tell you something. Something happened. They prayed until they got results. Well, we can say the same thing about the Mama Church, and God's still the same here as he is there. It ain't any difference. He's still the same here. He's healed Brother Carl when he had a death sentence, and Brother Carl run the top of them seats back through there with the cowboy boots on. And I told Sister Jerry when we went to the house, I said, Brother Carl got healed. She said, how do you know? I said, I felt far as he passed me. And when he went down, they checked him, and they said, something happened. What is it? He said, he ain't there. I said, I don't know what happened. He said, I do. The Lord healed me. He said, don't believe in that junk. Outside he went. In a few minutes he come back. Mr. Greg, something greater than us done it. It wasn't us. And, of course, Brother Carl got him. They was using some of the young doctors there from UK on his case. He said, what are you going to tell these young doctors? You've got two pictures. You've got one with a place, a cancer on this side and this side of my brain, and you've got another with nothing. Doc, what are you going to tell them? Pictures don't lie. And Doc was dumbfounded. He couldn't say nothing. Listen, folks, when God does something, you can put it in the book. You can put it in the book. We've seen miracles over there happen. We've seen miracles here that happen. And he's still miracle working God, and he ain't done working miracles. He's got a lot of miracles to work, but he wants you and I to give our devoted attention 100% to him. He don't want part of it. He don't want a part-time Christian. He wants all of us. He said, I will be found of you the minute you give me your whole heart. Now, if I give him my whole heart, I will be found of him. If I don't, I ain't going to prosper anything. If I hold back, I ain't going to be worth a dime, because I've learned a long time ago. Somebody said, well, he'll never know that. Hey, wait a minute. Let me run something by you. The fella that made man out of the dirt and breathed into him, and he became a living soul, and you think you can hide something from that kind of a feller? Not hardly. Not hardly. He knows you and me better than we do. We'd be foolish to try to hide something from him. In fact, I don't want to, because you know what? I want him to take his big searchlight and shine it on me. I pray that every night. Lord, if I've said, done, or thought anything today that I shouldn't have, you forgive me, because I don't want to lay down with something on my plate. Now, you can say what you want to. You can be a lot of times, and I one time, everybody might not have to do this, but one time I come in working, and I passed the house up when the Lord told me to stop. Now, come on in. Well, I was miserable. Through the next day, miserable. And I said, Lord, if you will spare me till tomorrow night. I said, I'll go talk to that man. Next night, I come in, I told Sister Jerry, she's cooking supper. I said, won't do no good. I said, I've got a job to do. And I left and went, and there was nobody there. All of the family was gone. The man was there himself. And he said, I said, I've come to talk to you about your soul. Well, what had happened, he had killed a man. There's a man had made a lunge at him with a knife, and he shot him and killed him in self-defense. He said, I killed a man. I said, hold it. I said, that won't hold water. He said, why? I said, Moses saw 2 Egyptians, and they was fighting and carrying on, and he just up and slew one of them, buried him in the sand. And the next day, some of his brothers was done that. He said, hold it. He said, don't you know? He thought that they would understand that God had sent him over there to deliver them. But God hadn't spoke to them. It spoke to Moses. And they said, who are you? Are you a judge? Will you kill us like you did the Egyptian? Well, he fled to the desert and was gone for 40 years. He'd done been down there 40 years, and he'd been down there 40 more years. And when he come back, God said, I've got a little job over here for you. Before he came back, he was watching Jethro's sheep, and he seen a bush burning. Bush wasn't burning up. And he said, Moses, come closer. When he come close, he said, pull your shoes off. He said, the ground, you're holy. Where you're standing is holy. And he said, I got a little job for you. What's that? He said, I want you to go to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. They've been in bondage. I've heard the cries. They've been in bondage for 430 years. It's time for them to be delivered. Well, Moses knew what he was getting into, and he started making excuses. He should have had enough sense to know that God knew he made his mouth. He said, Lord, you know I'm slow of speech. He said, I took that into consideration, Moses. But he said, you've got a brother, Aaron, that's a real good speaker. And you're going to tell him what to tell Pharaoh. Now, we're going to get that job done. I believe that God would heal them instantly like that if he hadn't have backed up on God. Where they come in, he said, who are you and who sent you? And he asked God, he said, who must I tell him? He said, you tell him I am that I am. That's all you have to tell him. And Pharaoh dallied backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and finally he wanted to keep the cattle and said, no, our cattle's got to go. He said, we don't know when we're going to have to offer sacrifice, and our cattle goes with us. Finally, when the death angel got to every one of the firstborn, he changed his tune. And he said, get your herds and be gone. Well, they got bowed out to the sea, and Pharaoh said, why in the world did I let them slaves go? Get the chariots and get ready. We're going after them. Well, the fellow that had delivered them up to there, they was about to kill him, because here come Pharaoh. Here's a Red Sea, but there's one fellow between them and the sea. There was a pillar of fire. And he said, Moses, lift his staff out. When he lifted it out, the water just parted and dry ground, and they went over. Now, let me tell you something. The devil can't walk on God's highway, because the devil decided he's going to go in. He said, I ain't going to let them escape. Let's go get them. But when they got in, sad news. The waters come back over top of them and drown them. Well, they say, you know, preacher, that's not much of a story. Where they crossed is only about an ankle deep. I said, it's a greater story than then. I said, he drowned the whole army in ankle deep water. I said, you ain't looking at it right. And so he took care of that, and he took his people out of there, and he got them over there. And they got the belly aching, didn't like that manna. All we had to do is go 6 days a week, go out and pick it up in the morning. And that was it. And they said, we want some meat. Okay, he said, I think I can arrange that. And quail blowed in 3 foot deep, some of the best meat that there was. And he said it run out their noses. And they didn't thank God for that. They was not thankful for that. They did not buy no shoes. They did not have to do nothing during 40 years. They had it made. Go out and gather manna. They was in heaven. And God was trying to show them what he could do, and he's trying to show us. Now, Jesus showed us when he was feeding the people, when he was teaching the people. There was about 5,000 besides men and women, and most usually they have 2 or 3 young ones and some 4. So 25,000 people at least. Little boy's lunch. He said, that's all we found. Little boy's lunch. He said, well, first of all, Jesus told him, said, you feed them. Buddy, they couldn't handle that job. They said, Lord, there's just a little lad's lunch here. He said, get it. And when that little boy gave the lunch, he blessed it and break it, and notice nothing happened until he started handing it out. And he said, do not waste no fragments, pick them up. And they picked up 12 baskets of fragments from feeding about 5,000 plus women and children. Now, would you think that if there has a catastrophe hit the United States, now we've hit, whether you know it or not, we've hit some bad growing weather all the way across the United States. California, in Georgia, and in South Carolina, the sweet potato crop, I would say, is gone because water gets over top of taters and there's a little white speck comes on them, and first thing you know, they rot. It got over them. It got over their second crop of corn and all of these things, and looks like that it's going to be a catastrophe all the way around. Say, ain't you worried? No. Why should I worry? We got a feller that said he owned the cattle on 1,000 hills. And the land belonged to none. He owns the taters in the hills. If I want a steak or I want a tater, you think he can't give it to me? He said, if a man delight himself in the Lord, he shall give him the desires of his heart. 37 Psalm says. He'll give us the desires of our heart. Well, did you know that if you delight yourself in the Lord, you're not going to ask nothing and be contrary to his will? That's a blank check. But that's like the fella that I put stores in for about 20 years, Stephen Kraft. We was putting one in, and Steve was, him and I went up there, and he was talking to the guy that was putting up the blocks and stuff. They'd put them up, and we'd do the finishing. And Steve said, I better fix you some checks. He signed me 6 blank checks and give them to him. And he went in to use the phone, and that man come over there to me. He said, Mister, did I see what I think I seen? I said, what's that? He said, was them blank checks that Jew wrote his name on? I said, yeah. He said, you mean he trusts you like that? I said, you know why he trusts me like that? I said, they don't like me at the lumber company because I said, I deal with them just like as I'm dealing with my money, because I said, every time I save him, I get part of it. I said, I ain't no dummy. I said, I ain't going to take abuse his stuff. And he recognized that. And he said, well, he said, and I come find out later that fella was a little bit of a crook. And that's why that you couldn't trust a lot of people. But we know without a shadow of a doubt, you and I has been put in different places, and we're there for a witness where we're there on our job or whatever we're doing. But here's one thing to make sure. Do not let the devil steal your joy. Because Satan tried to steal my joy. Now, I'm going to tell you something. There's not been one of them in here that he ain't visited at some time or another and tried to discourage you. I want to encourage you. I want to tell you something. We're fixing to see the move of the Holy Ghost like it did in Acts 2 and 4. Only it's going to be more than it was then. Because Joel said the latter outpouring is going to be greater. Get ready, get ready, get ready. They're coming. You don't want to miss. You don't want to miss, because I'm going to tell you something. You and I have got a record. Believe it or not, we've got a record. Malachi chapter 3 said, them that thought often upon the name of the Lord, a book of remembrance was wrote for them, and their name was wrote in it. And when I make up my jewels, they'll be in it. I don't know about you, but I want to be in his book. There's a lot of books. Might make, in this life, you might make top notch. You might do this. You might be number one. But you know what? If you get in his book and you hear him say, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter into the joys of the Lord, then you and I have got it made. But until we make it into the city, there's danger along the way. I'm not saying that Jesus can't keep us. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we have got to guard again the things that would defile our walk with the Lord. Now, I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot of things that you can't do and I can't do. I'm not putting this and that like that. But the reason why that you can't do it, because you're a born-again child of God. Oh, yeah, you could do it if you wasn't born again, if you was just a hypocrite around. But if you're a born-again child of God, you can't dibble-dabble around in the things the devil's got. Now, he's got a lot of pretty things he'll offer you. And they look real good. But you know what it's like? It's like an apple a lot of times. You cut into that apple, and sometimes there's a little fella in there called a worm. And that happens in the things that he's got. Because he ain't got no good things for me and you. All he's got is bad things for me and you. And what we have got to do, we have got to guard one another. You say, I thought I just had to take it. No. Jesus asked Cain, he said, where's thy brother Abel? Why, he said, I don't know. He said, what are you asking me for? He said, am I my brother's keeper? He said, yes. And your brother's blood is crying out of the ground because you didn't do what you're supposed to do. You killed him. Well, what's going to happen to all of these little babies that's been killed? It could have been university presidents, could have been presidents, vice presidents, great evangelists, pastors, teachers, doctors, and everything could have been. They could have been. Because you know why? He spoke to Jeremiah and said, Jeremiah, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, and I ordained you to be a prophet for the nations. See, God's already got our life ordained for us. And if we've got, but do you know what you got to do? You've got to agree to go along with what God wants for you. Now, don't tell me that some of us didn't back up. I did not want to preach, and especially pastor. But you know what? When he got done with me, I found out I didn't have no other choice. If I wanted to stay in the race, I had to do his bidding. I had to do what he wanted me to do, not what I wanted to do. Oh, yeah, I would like to went with the singing groups and run all over the country with the bus, and I could have done it because I was in with some that was playing good, and I could have been used in a few things around it and done a few things, commentaries, and said things and spoke a little and could have got by. But that wasn't what he had set out for this old boy. He had an entirely different path for me, and I sure didn't want that path. But you know what? I'm not sick. I'm not sorry. Yes, there's been some rough paths along the way. We've had people's lied on us. Because of the way people has treated me and Sister Jerry, we've got some of our family that's not serving God. Because they seen it. We didn't do nothing to nobody. We have never done nothing to nobody. And we've had people, and some of you all here know that these people has told an outright lie. You know what? They'll meet that if they don't fix it up. Because there's a place, somebody said, well, I got by with that. No. The book said you won't come out till you paid the very last farthing. You and I ain't going to come out. It gets me as well as you. And what it is, it's for our benefit. What it's for, it's to help us get rid of the flesh and get the spirit built up to where we can be workers for him. Now, Brother Fred said that even before he got saved, God dealt with him because his half-brother, Morgan, he had it was there when we went down there at the funeral, a rifle, that he pulled that rifle and he was going to blow Morgan's brains out. And Brother Fred told me that God spoke to him and said, Fred, you can kill him, but he said, it'll be the end of you. It's going to be the end of you. And buddy, he said, I got rid of that rifle right quick. And he went one time. Here's how he got what he got. His dad had a farm over there in around Norton, Virginia. Had a little building, 12, 14 foot, out in the woods. And there was several of them that started preaching about the same time. They'd take water, a paper, a notebook, and their Bibles, and stay 3 or 4 days. He said, one time I went, and he said there wasn't nobody there. He said, when I opened the door, he said, right over in the corner was one of the biggest rattlesnakes I ever looked at. He said he was coiled up, and he said, I said, devil, you get that thing out of here. I come here on business for the king. You know what he said he done? He said he just uncoiled and went out of that door and down through the woods. And he said, I went ahead with my business. Now, I want to tell you something, folks. The devil will try a lot of things. He'll try a lot of things. But you got to understand that he's given you and I power over all the powers of the enemy. Not part of it, over all of it. If we could get it from here to here. You have any problems doing that? Okay. Let's work on it. Okay? Because I want to be a part of this group that's coming through here. I don't want to have to sit on the sidelines when they're laying all over the floor up here, slayed in the power of God. Cancer's falling off. Braces falling off. Blinded eyes being healed. And all of these things, and people are getting saved and filled with the Holy Ghost. It's going to be a wonderful time, folk. I don't know about you. I ain't got a gloom and doom to tell you. I've got something to tell you, that we've got to guard what we've got. We've got to guard what he's given us, because it's precious. It is very precious. Somebody said, well, it don't matter whether I go to church on prayer meeting or not. Now, let me tell you a story. 43 or 44 years ago, I was still working in Ohio. Where we were going, I come down the road, a mile from church, there'd be 2 or 3 families sitting out on the porch, unconcerned as anything. But you know what happened to them families? Most of them backslid. Most of them died lost. I had people made fun of me. Said, you don't have to do that, Winston. I said, no, but I get to. I said, I get to. I said, I get to do that. And you know what? God's blessed me for it. Because you know why? I wasn't in this thing for a show. I was in this thing for a race in heaven. I was in this thing for Jesus. And that's what I'm still in it for. And I want to see us all blooming with the gifts, fruit. Because you know what? If he comes and don't have fruit, we don't have fruit, we're going to be in trouble. A lot of trouble if we ain't got some fruit. Because he's looking for fruit. And you know what kind of fruit he's looking for? Fruit of righteousness. Good fruit. But I love you. And I've got to pound this as much as I can. Don't let the devil trick you out of your salvation.